santx / Jonathan, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Sweet. Would you like to? So you've given us this beautiful poem about your cultural experience as an immigrant.
Well, I myself, I myself am not an immigrant. I was actually born and raised here in the Bay Area.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
But I am the child of former refugees from El Salvador, and that has informed a lot of the things that I grew up with. First of all, before I go into it, I'd like to acknowledge that I am currently talking to you all from unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land. And I also wanted to start this off by saying Happy May Day, also known as International Workers' Day, and to especially keep Black, Indigenous, and POC workers, queer, trans, and intersex workers, workers with disabilities, and undocumented workers in your thoughts. Okay, so this piece is titled Kushkatan. You stand on the shoulders of deities, crafted from maize, sprouted from volcanic ash, creator and destroyer, reborn in the resplendent feathers of the toros. You are born from death and displacement, wailing cries of mothers searching for their children. You strike with the gun, or is it the pen? Liberation delivered through mass, disobeying man's God. You are your ancestors, past, present, future, unmovable yet fluid, holding the universe, divine, dual, masculine, feminine. You exist, and for that you must yell. Yell at the top of your lungs till you're out of breath, till your voice runs out, until they can no longer ignore you. You are here and you will remain. This poem was actually written a couple of years ago during a workshop at San Francisco State through the Richard Oakes Multicultural Center while I was a student there. And I literally just wrote the poem down in a notebook, read it aloud once in a non-edited form, closed that notebook, put it away, never saw it again until recently. And the reason why I decided to revisit this poem was because while I was doing a deep cleaning of my apartment, I actually managed to find the notebook again. And it just seemed like it was fate at the moment because very recently my great-grandmother had passed away. She was born December 2nd, 1914, and she passed away this year, 2020. And my great-grandmother for sure has been a figure in my life and in the life of many other people that really sticks out. I mean, how many other people do you know that were born in 1914? My great-grandmother was born in El Salvador during a time where there were no paved roads. Most of the country did not have access to electricity. She lived through the 1932 Indigenous and Peasant Uprising, which then resulted in the dictator at the time, Maximiliano Hernandez, to send the military to kill over 30,000 people in the span of 3 days, most of them being Indigenous people. She lived through the Salvadoran Civil War, which lasted from 1980 to 1992, and she lived to see 4 generations after her. And so my great-grandmother for sure has been influential, to say the least, in my life, the way that she managed to survive, resist, and live her own life. And in her honor, I would like to actually spend the rest of my time by plugging in a call from workers on the ground in El Salvador. So this is through CSPIS, which is the Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador. I will link their website with more information in the chat box. But currently, workers in El Salvador under the fascist regime of the current president, Nayib Bukele, have come out with a list of 9 demands. The demands are: 1, stop the layoffs and respect rights of workers, including public sector workers at all levels of government. 2, respect union freedom and collective agreement of public sector workers. 3, promote micro and small businesses. 4, fund the healthcare and education and rescue the primary and community healthcare programs that focus on preventative health through taxes on the wealthy. 5, defense of water and no to privatization. 6, approval of the Ley de Soberanía Alimentaria and reform of the Ley de Pesticidas to prohibit the use of agrotoxics. 7, no tax evasion by transnational corporations. 8, no to unmanageable debt owed to international financial institutions by impoverished countries. 9, we call on the executive government to respect press freedom and right to free expression, respect institutionality and separation of powers, and democratic process born through the peace accord. And yeah, that is all I currently have to share right now. So if anyone has any questions or any comments, feel free to go ahead and share them.
A line that really spoke to me was, "You strike with the gun, or is it the pen?" I was just wondering if you could expand more on that. I'm sure you have stories about that, and I would love to hear them.
Yeah, so it's a bit of historical context. During the 1980s, mostly under the Reagan administration of the US, the US propagated proxy wars in Central America. They supported the military governments of El Salvador and Guatemala at the time. They supported the Contras in Nicaragua, and they supported the military dictatorship of Honduras to train forces that they would later on send to these 3 countries. And at the time, various revolutionaries, you know, a lot of these people, working class, peasants, indigenous folks, they would take up arms. But not only would they take up arms, there was this documentary on the Sandinistas in Nicaragua leading up to the overthrow of the dictator at the time, Anastasio Somoza. They actually implemented amongst themselves like poetry writing workshops while they were hiding out in the mountains and the jungles. And so there were multiple ways that these revolutionaries would strike. They wouldn't just strike with guns, they also struck with pens through the work that they ended up writing. And poetry for sure is very influential in the revolutionary spirit of Central America. If you look at the history of Central American uprising, Central American resistance, there's a lot of prominent figures within poetry and literature. And so I wanted to basically pay homage to that.
What is a torogos? Is it a mythical creature or an actual animal? Or what is it?
The torogos is an actual bird. I keep forgetting the name of it in English, but in El Salvador, it's known as a torogos. It is the national bird of the country. And it also happens to be the national bird of Nicaragua, but it goes under a different name in Nicaragua. They call it guarda barranco. And so the torogos has significance not only as a national symbol because it is the national bird of El Salvador, but also it features very symbolically in other ways. Like there is this saying that you cannot keep a torogos in captivity because they will try until its death to escape. And that was also a bit in reference to the current situation at the US-Mexico border with people being in concentration camps and how this has led to the death of many folks, including indigenous children, trans women, many of them coming from Central America. And I feel like it really speaks to the soul that Central Americans have in the way that they resist. You know, a bird being represented by a bird that you cannot even hold in captivity. It would prefer death over that.
Can I say something? I just want to say thank you for your voice and for sharing. I think I'm a lot older than a lot of you here. I remember writing a paper in high school about what was happening in Central America in the 80s. And all I can say is it's folks like you with the ability to articulate yourself that we need in office. So just please keep using your voice. You got a strong voice.
I'd also like to say thank you. And I'm curious, Jonathan, are you a student at CCSF or what's your connection to, I just want to hear more of your work, so.
I've got a couple of friends who go to CCSF, and I was planning on enrolling late this semester. However, through the whole COVID-19 thing, that just didn't happen. So we'll see when I end up enrolling in classes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a website or maybe an Instagram you could share? I'm sure it's on the gallery site actually, but.
Yeah, I don't have my own website. However, I am active on Twitter and Instagram. I have the same username there that I came up with, I think around the time where I freshly graduated high school. It's at Pupusazadi. I will send it right now through the chat box.
Sorry, Jonathan. I just wanna, this is Vic speaking. I can't, like the contrast between this work and the depth of it and your Twitter and Instagram. But no, there's lots of love. Like it's great. So yes, I just wanted to point out the contrast. I mean, if anything, it says that, you know, distinctly, I'm so like, I'm so touched by your work, and the exact opposite is happening with your Twitter account. But yes,
Jonathan, I noticed that there's, like, from what I understood with the craft from maize and sprouted from volcanic ash, there's a lot of like allusion to Popol Vuh. Was that something that you did, like, intentionally, or an inspiration behind that?
Thank you for that question. Yes, it was actually. So the title of the poem and the very first couple of lines are for sure influenced by indigenous cosmology within the region. So the Popol Vuh is a great example. The Popol Vuh comes from the Maya Quiche people who are from what is now considered modern-day Guatemala, but various other indigenous peoples within the region share the same or similar cosmologies. And basically it is that people are made out of maize, people are made out of corn, because it is such a staple of people's diets out there, especially if they're workers or if they're peasants. And the word Kushkatan is actually not Nahuatl, which means place of jewel necklaces. And Nahuatl is spoken by one of the indigenous peoples of El Salvador, the Pipil, who were most notably present in the western side of the country, which is where most of my family is. And I really wanted to pay honor to indigenous peoples, because without it, it's indigenous peoples that are always in the forefront when it comes to issues of land and water and sustainability. And without those things, we don't really have anything.